So, Jonathan, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what were some of the friction points or challenges, or how did you overcome internally with your team, and let's say with management, with your boss, executive team, whatever nomenclature you use. How did you go from thinking, internally, okay, we're focusing on lead gen, to making that switch to demand gen, which for many organizations, big or small, is a radical shift. It's a big shift. It's something that, it's like saying, well, peanut butter jelly isn't the best sandwich out there. It's really, I don't know, grilled cheese. I don't know, whatever. That was a terrible analogy. Normally I'm better with analogies. That was a
That
horrible
was not
analogy.
one of your best
That
moments, not gonna
that
lie.
that okay. I'm gonna keep it in here because it's funny and I'll laugh at myself. But you get what I'm trying to say. The point
Yep.
is, like, how did you and your marketing team help your internal team, especially your higher ups, make that switch and commit to that way of thinking in terms of your marketing plan?
Sure. So I'll give credit to our leadership team. They've been very supportive throughout this journey and this slow transition, but I'll walk through kind of the approaches that I took as a part of that journey. And really, I'd say there are a couple of key components that it makes sense to think through as you're going through this journey is, oftentimes you focus on, your direct manager or your leadership, but I think it's also critically important to focus on the sales side as well, because if you can get support from the sales reps, from the sales team, from sales leadership, well, that's going to be additional resources in your, on your side as you go for the larger organizational change, as well as a lot of organizations are still battling a sales and marketing fight where it's not sales and marketing, it's sales versus marketing. And that's created oftentimes because of the older model. So the sooner you can get sales on board, the easier it's going to be across the organization. As far as how I did it, the biggest thing for me was making sure that I and the marketing team fundamentally understood how our business operates and the impact that marketing can have. So I talked about it a little bit earlier, but breaking down not the pipeline, not in a million steps and not thinking about MQLs, but understanding what are the basic business metrics that drive success as a marketing team. So if I'm going to break it down in a couple of steps, what's our budget? How much budget do we have across the board? Let's not get focused too much on individual channels. With that, what is our historical, cost per lead or cost per hand raise or whatever that may be? What is our average conversion from lead or SQL to opportunity? Of those inbounds, what's the conversion from the opportunity to close one? And then what is the revenue that we can expect from that? And so by breaking it down into that extremely simple funnel, you then understand your business. You don't have to get into all the details of each channel. You understand these are the general metrics that we expect to hit across the board. Instead of focusing on way up here, let's just focus on making sure that we can keep this consistency through the funnel and ultimately end up in revenue. So I think by flipping it away from focusing on, just an MQL or just an SQL to the overall pipeline, you can start to have conversations internally that display that you really understand the business. You really understand not just that you're getting leads, but the long-term impact of those leads, and can leverage that information for conversations. So after I understood the business, after we talked through it as a marketing team, after we had thorough analysis and reports that showed us how we were progressing, we could actively have those conversations with sales leadership, with my boss, with the rest of the leadership team, to understand that we've been focused on it this way for the past. Not that that's wrong, but I think if we simplify our approach, we're going to have a much more unified stance on what marketing means and what it does for the organization. And we can actually accomplish more because of that. So, as we had the conversations internally, it started with refocusing our goals. So instead of focusing on MQLs or leads, first step was focusing on those sales qualified leads, or hand raisers, really, in our case, whatever acronym you want to put behind it. That was step one. Step two was flipping that to focus on revenue as the primary metric. And then step three was, taking a full step back and not just focusing on the revenue within a channel, but the overall impact to the business, how those come all the way through, and focusing on, instead of it just being marketing sourced or demand gen, and focus on just inbound. But if I were to go into it from day one and say, you know what, we're not going to focus on marketing source. We're going to focus on inbound, and we're not going to focus on MQLs. We're going to focus on revenue. And I didn't have the proof behind it. And I didn't have those strategic conversations. It may have been, maybe not at Achieve It, but in some cases that could have been seen as, me being somebody or a marketing leader that doesn't want to take accountability or doesn't want to be held to numbers. You really have to walk through that as a strategic process instead of just jumping all the way to the end state.